Hey guys, welcome back to Vintage Super League. We are going to have a round 3 matchup, and it's still going to be Hall of Fame on Hall of Fame. We're going to have Luis Scott-Vargas, and he's going to play against Randy Buehler. Kai Bude, testing in DC, no internet. Unfortunate, but for Kai fans, he will be here next time that we have Vintage Super League, which I guess is going to be after the Pro Tour, and then week 3 he's going to play 2 matches. So a lot of Kai to look forward to if that's your thing. I don't know. I'm kind of over the guy. I don't know what you think. But no, I love Kai. He's a great addition.
I think that any combination of people among the 10 are going to make for a great match. So I can't complain. And
Well, you can't say that. You've never seen Kai play in this league before, so now you're just
no,
speculating.
you're right. Kai has built a bit of a reputation. Granted, the last time I remember Kai playing a vintage deck outside of the exhibition match, it involved donating illusions of grandeur. I really hope he's on that strategy again because dealing 20 still usually doesn't have to win.
That would be pretty sweet. Well, we're going to see Randy's deck again, though. What did you think about that one? Obviously, you just got
I've seen enough of Randy's deck, honestly.
Sorry.
I think that part of what Delver tries to do is to mitigate the entropy that is Magic: The Gathering, but you can only do that so much. I mean, that's why we play Magic, not poker. Sometimes you
Thanks for rubbing that in.
Then you draw more land. But that's part of the game, right? Randy had the second map in game 3. I didn't want him finding a map to the Academy. Still went to the Academy. And in the end, I needed that Snapcaster to hit to hit an Ingot Chewer or something other than a mental misstep. But he had a mental misstep, and that was that. So Randy and I had some fantastic games, and I think that it's a tribute to Vintage, really, that even a deck designed to win on the first turn can produce 3 extremely interactive games of Magic.
That is true, yeah. There are definitely some sweet games in there. Diminishing returns, getting to resolve is always a fun one.
I haven't. I actually almost clicked the OK button when the toggle was at 0 cards. That would have been really bad.
Yeah, I actually didn't even realize that was a thing, that it was a drop to 7 cards, and Luis pointed that out. Like that's probably what we're waiting on right now. I'm like, oh, that's real interesting. That sounds like a great design for Magic Online, where I'm sure I'm going to miss.
Yes, it starts at 0 because one presumes that's usually what you'd want, since you don't want to deck yourself or take a lot of damage off Underworld Dreams.
Yeah, that actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are just waiting for them to set up things on Magic Online, get themselves both into the game.
Good. Good. I see they fixed my name. You can. I'm not actually Dave Williams. That's get the right name.
Neither am I. I remind myself every day. Why me?
No, they're right. Yeah, the names are right.
All right, so we're just waiting for Luis and Randy to set up their match. What do you think Luis might be on this time?
I really hope he's on this.
We've seen him play blue control, dirtily blue control, dirtily blue control, and dirtily blue control. So you think he mixes it up and goes with a little more streamlined blue control, or goes even dirtilier blue control?
I'm hoping for gifts. I really, really wanted to make gifts work, and I had some elderly vintage wizards helping me. Wasn't able to get gifts at the point where I was happy enough with it.
Well, if you get a really good version, if you could send it my way, because I'm also interested in playing some gifts again. It's been a long time.
I'm more hopeful than anything else about gifts. I'm hoping that some clever person in this league has managed to put the pieces together, as it were, and it'll be a gift to all of us.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something that's going to be tested within the next month or so until we have to submit our second set of decks. It was a little rough with the whole Magic Online, not having everything set up right away, but yeah, it's a transitional period, and it looks like we are ready to go down to the match. It's going to be Luis Scott-Vargas, and it's going to be Randy Buehler on the other side.
Yes. Doing his best impression of Kai, I bet.
Aren't we all? Every time I enter a Magic tournament, my best impression of Kai, let me tell you.
Fair. Well, all right. Looks like LSV's hand has Yawgmoth's Will and a discard spell. That's a great hand. And Randy's hand has 3 Moxes.
Yeah, Randy's hand kind of has it all and kind of doesn't have that much.
It's awkward because if he plays, the hand doesn't generate a single mana unless he throws away his Ancestral Recall.
Right. That is exactly the case. If he does do that, he's looking at a ton of mana. The Mox Opal comes down. He can play Voltaic
Right.
Key, turning on the Opal. Plays the Mana Vault off that, which can then to cast Voltaic Key, which can untap Mana Vault, and he can just cast Charbelcher and pass the turn, leaving up a turn 2 kill with no
Right.
cards in hand.
But this
And
walks right into Force of Will.
that does walk right into Force of Will. But I mean, who's lucky enough to have Force of Will? And what are the odds that Luis is even going to be playing blue?
You think he'd mulligan into a Force of Will here? That's hard to imagine.
I think that Randy knows how unlikely it is for Luis to play blue. He only plays blue 99.99% of the time because, I mean, occasionally he's going to misclick and choose the wrong deck from his
Right, right. And
selection.
why would you mulligan into a hand that has Force of Will against the Goblin Charbelcher deck?
this, this
One of the
is one of the
salient
times where it
differences
is
between Red
especially nice to know what your
and
opponent is on.
yes, Gitaxian Probe I think made all the difference in the world there. Against me, Randy had Gitaxian Probe, which let him play around all my counters. I thought about mental misstepping it, and I felt good about having saved that for the map. But
Yeah, it's a tough
if he
spot
didn't
to be
have
in because Mental Misstep is so good against him.
absolutely, yeah, Gitaxian Probe. It took a little while for that card to see as much of an uptick in play as it has, but I think it's good that I'm playing 3 of them this week, and having played only 2 of them before, I found that wasn't enough.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting card. It's definitely at its weakest when people are able to do a lot to basically pressure your life totals to make that 2 life a real cost, or when you're facing down things like Chalice of the Void on one, or you're facing
Right,
down Sphere of Resistance, which really just
right.
makes Gitaxian Probe look silly. It just
Yeah, if you have to start
it
paying
doesn't do
mana
anything.
for your spells, why even bother?
Yeah, exactly. But if you don't, I mean, it's just makes your deck smaller and it turns on your delve. Like that's a great deal.
Right.
So if you're not facing down a lot of pressure, you're not facing down that artifact hate from the Mishra's Workshop decks and the various stacks decks. Taxian Probe's an all-star.
It is.
I guess not an all-star, but a very good role player.
Well,
I
one
really
of the
stress
things
it.
it does, and I think it's an extremely powerful thing, is that it lets you increase the percentage of your deck that's blue without actually doing so.
True. Yeah, that's a
Delver
great
decks
point.
don't have an issue with it, but a lot of decks in Vintage actually struggle to get enough blue cards to put Force of Will online, and
Yep.
Gitaxian Probe's a way to do that without actually increasing the demands of blue mana for your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the combination with Young Pyromancer need not be stated, as we've been able to see across lots of formats.
Absolutely, absolutely. Likely only going to get even better when the next set arrives.
Sure, just more Young Pyromancers.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you want a monk to go with your elemental friend.
All right, so Randy,
So
wow,
Randy drew
that could have been just
Time
game over.
Vault, and if LSV didn't have a Force of Will and a blue card in his hand, this would be really bad for LSV.
Yeah, it would be game over levels of bad. I guess Randy actually had a reasonable number of top decks. Charbelcher off the top would not have necessarily been game because there is an academy still in his deck, so it doesn't guarantee that he just dies, but it
That's
does at the
true.
very least put him on a 2-turn clock.
That's
Time
true. One
Vault
of the things
would
about
just kill.
Goblin Charbelcher, and this doesn't come up all the time, is that if your opponent survives the first belching, you sort of wipe your chin off and then you rearrange the cards onto the bottom of your library.
So Randy's actually in quite good shape. He has nothing in hand, but Luis is literally hellbent, and
Well,
Randy has 7 mana available. That's very real. He's got
he's a lot
multiple
of
blue mana
decks.
available, so can really just do
So
anything he wants.
LSV has Flusterstorm and Gush, which could go live as soon as, oh, no, there's a card. There's the map, right to the Academy.
Yeah, that does a pretty good job of turning off Flusterstorm, which really doesn't actually hit that many things in Randy's deck. It does hit the draw sevens and hits the Mind's Desire, but you can't actually use it to counter something like Goblin Charbelcher.
It, it's true. It will probably be able to handle Pact of Negation.
It will be able to do that. So yeah, Randy has no threat, but Luis is the one who's really kind of behind the 8 ball because he's not playing a deck that can necessarily win quickly.
Right.
Not just in terms of speed of the actual deck clock, but in terms of how long it takes to think about how to make your plays. As we've seen this
Now,
deck in season 1, it's not the easiest.
no, no. You can often involve thinking for 20 minutes at a time. And we are playing 40-round clocks this time. So that could
Yeah,
make a difference in how well this deck performs.
Yeah, or just forces people to play it a little bit faster instead of necessarily finding the A plus plus pile. We'll just stick with just A plus and call it a day.
That's true. That's true. So LSV is gushing here. Let's see. Oh, all right. So he has Doomsday and not too much else. But this will actually let him Doomsday.
Randy can pact and pay for pact.
Yes.
So
Yes.
doesn't
This is
actually. Oh, he has Flusterstorm. I guess that doesn't do anything either, though. Pact doesn't actually cost
like
anything.
Randy can
I'm trying
actually
to, even if it
pay
costs the full
for,
5, like a.
pay for Flusterstorm. Yeah. Oh. So Randy gets a two exciting triggers on the stack. He could take a damage or lose the game, depending on what he wants to happen.
Which would you do?
I would rather take the one damage. It's like losing a 20th of the game.
It is. I don't like losing any positional advantage, but luckily the mana vault is untapped, so he can just not lose the game and not lose the damage and
Better.
call it a turn.
Yeah, and he drew Mental Misstep, which is a very reasonable card in this matchup.
Yeah,
And it
for
looks
sure.
like LSV drew a Tropical Island, which is less reasonable in this.
Interesting.
Now there's an extremely powerful card, Mind's Desire. One of the things about Mind's Desire is it's it's a card that gets around most of the counters in the game. And
Probe's a good
now
draw too. All of these draws have been great.
this is really good for Randy, and it looks like
Absolutely.
he's going to be able to
Wow,
set
I'm
up a
surprised he's
turn where
not
he
interested
can
in mental
just.
misstep.
I'm surprised too.
Interesting.
What this lets LSV do is float a counter atop his library, and
Absolutely.
it turns all of his fetch lands into pseudo brainstorms, at least Calamar deaths.
Yeah, it allows him to look at the top of his library. It doesn't actually allow any card drawing. The fact that this probe doesn't actually give full information now because the top will let Luis draw a card off the top of his library basically whenever he wants. Just got to tap the thing. Yeah, he's no longer working with full information off these probes. It's kind of interesting.
It is, and one of the things about there's an interesting interaction between Mind's Desire and Flusterstorm, which is that if Randy actually casts Mind's Desire here, then he'll essentially need to pay one per spell that he wants to resolve because LSV will be able to put one copy of Flusterstorm um, onto the stack, targeting each instance of Mind's Desire. Now, it's interesting that in Vintage, Chaos Orb is banned because it requires manual dexterity. I don't know if you've ever tried to cast Flusterstorm. That also requires manual dexterity.
It does. That's true. So
Now
this storm
here,
count is not going to be low, but
no.
he has so much mana.
You're seeing Randy build his very own Lotus Petal, playing a Mox Opal into another Mox Opal. One of them survives, it increases the storm count, and it nets a blue mana.
This Chrome Mox can turn the mental misstep into a mana should Randy choose.
Though he can also turn it into a mana by just throwing it at an instance of Flusterstorm because they all have a mana cost of 1. So Randy could actually play the Chrome Mox to increase storm and mana count, and then use the mental misstep to target one copy of Flusterstorm.
He certainly can. He can trade 2 life for 1 mana. That is an option.
Sometimes you want to do that. I mean, it's like a reverse greed, right?
Well, yeah. The Chrome Mox he could just imprint it, and he's getting the mana as well. So it's kind of interesting.
Now,
Goes
the
well
nightmare scenario here, I think, is that LSV have something along the lines of another Flusterstorm. He probably wouldn't have a Mind Break Trap in his main deck.
Right. Yeah, it's just basically looking at whatever the top card is, since that top did resolve, which meant Luis can float a card. If it happens to be a second copy of Flusterstorm,
Yeah,
well,
that would
then he's
be
in business.
extremely unfortunate for Randy. The other option is that LSV can see a fourth card by popping top after shuffling.
Now this Tinker is going to force Luis's hand. He's going to have to be countered, or the Charbelcher just comes out and wins the game on the spot.
This is
Does he
very
even have enough mana to Flusterstorm this? I assume he has to. The Academy's not actually tapping for that much. I guess he has 8 mana available. He would still need 3 mana to actually activate the Belcher. The Chrome Mox is another mana in hand.
Though I don't know how necessary it is that Randy win the game on the spot.
No, absolutely.
Especially if
Luis
he
could win
has
the game on
plenty
the
of
spot.
LSV's hand.
There are definitely combinations of cards that will allow Luis to win the game on the spot with the top, needing
Right.
2 cards.
Though
But
if he doesn't pop the top, I think that he'll just lose to Randy this turn.
oh yeah, he's definitely dead to the combination of having 2 spells.
All right, so looks like
Well, this Mind's
Tinker's
Desire is
doing.
going to resolve.
All right, so LSV is cutting off the deterministic path to victory, and then Randy's just going to have to roll the dice and see if the top 43 or so cards of his library give him a way to win.
I think he's favored.
He's not unfavored, and you'll note that LSV has avoided the scenario of having to use Flusterstorm against Mind's Desire.
Yeah. He did fade that one nicely. Although we did see in the finals of VSL last year, Luis and Steve had an epic Flusterstorm battle where I actually think they actually cast the card correctly in what can only be described as a not quite minor but major miracle.
I think that's quite an accomplishment. That goes on the old resume right there.
How could it not? It's more impressive than actually winning.
Okay. So it looks like we're going to see a giant Mind's Desire.
This one will end the game about 99 times out of 99.000000001.
So Mind's Desire has long been used in vintage Storm decks as a threat that can't really be countered. The way the Storm mechanic works is that it's a trigger that puts separate instances of the card onto the stack, and each needs to be dealt with directly. And there are only very few cards, Counterflux, Mindbreak Trap, Silence, Orange Chant, that actually deal with this.
So what did Randy actually hit here? I guess
Well,
Tezzeret just gets a Belcher.
And Tezzeret will win the game for him.
I guess he could have desired for too many cards where the Belcher can't do enough damage immediately, and somehow Luis gets another turn, and he doesn't have any way to shuffle his graveyard.
That's true. That's true. But then that whole
It's not realistic.
deck thing would actually come up.
Absolutely. All right, so not sure exactly what anyone has in their sideboard here, as we are in week 1 overall. Haven't seen the deck list yet, but I'm sure there's probably some spicy ones.
Yeah.
We seem to not be too concerned about this matchup. Thought he had a decent chance when we were talking last round. So
I thought he had a not unreasonable chance in this matchup too. The Belcher deck's extremely powerful. It's very fast and it's resilient. It's not one of those combo decks where after the first Force of Will, it's done. It's not a glass cannon. Char Belcher is certainly made of something other than glass. I don't want to conjecture what, but not glass. So in formats like Legacy, for example, you have a version of Belcher, and I think Tinderwall is involved, and all the red rituals are involved. And one Force of Will in that deck usually can't recover, but because this is vintage, you can build the deck with a Tolarian Academy instead of a Taiga. And that's
a big upgrade.
It's a big upgrade. For one thing, it taps for blue and not red or green, and for another, it taps for about 17 blue.
Yeah, those both sound good to me, honestly. And yeah, Randy definitely putting the rest of the league at risk here of going to 2-0 before half the people have even played a game. So
that's true. All right,
it's quite an uphill battle for the rest of us.
I think we're getting a look at Randy's deck here. All right, so it looks like his sideboard has Void Snare, 1 Mental Misstep, Mindbreak Trap, 3 Leyline of Anticipation, Hercule's Recall, 2 Mishra's Workshop, a Defense Grid, Diminishing Returns, as we all know, Pact of Negation, Memory Jar, Grim Monolith, and a Mystical Tutor.
Well, he also has multiple copies of the Diminishing Returns main. So he's just boarding in a third
Two
copy.
main deck Diminishing Returns. Wow. I'm surprised he's playing more than one, because that card actually has Diminishing Returns.
Yeah, it says it right in the name, and no one pointed that out to him yet.
It does warn you, in fact, yes. I do think that at some point you're just going to get an opponent who clicks on OK and takes a new hand of 0.
Oh, yeah. All right, looks like we're ready for game two. We got a second to look at Luis's sideboard. I saw a Mind Break Trap, which is pretty sweet.
That's probably a good one. Luis's hand here is really strong. It doesn't have a force of will, but because he's on the play, he's going to be able to leverage that Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I mean, he's got probe to know whether he wants to Thoughtseize right away or whether he has time to preordain. I guess it also depends on what he draws off of it. Obviously, if he's able to draw like a green mana source, he's able to kind of go off to the races a little bit with Fast Button Gush.
Now, on the other hand, Randy has the Academy in his starting hand, and
that is huge for this deck.
All
If
of
anyone
my
wasn't sure.
sideboarding approaches to this matchup have been predicated on preventing that from happening.
Absolutely. Did you end up running a copy of Strip Mine in your deck?
I didn't. I played 3 Dig Through Time and 2 Snapcaster Mage, and I ended up playing an additional mana source. Clearly, that didn't work out well in the second game, but I found that I needed to add more mana, and in particular more blue mana, to make the deck work with Dig over Cruise.
So Luis's plan here was to Thoughtseize the Preordain after seeing a hand that just had a million mana. All the mana in the world, honestly, for Randy. If he draws a threat, though, the game just ends on the spot.
Yes.
He has to look at Luis's hand, not facing anything threatening. Black Lotus, 3 mana. Mox, 4. Another Mox, 5. Academy is going to be able to tap for at least 4 mana.
Yeah, if Randy draws Emrakul here, I think he just takes an extra turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Annihilator's not at its best on turn 1, but still good.
It's not bad.
Oh, absolutely.
It's okay. Bad. So,
Randy emptying his hand fully. Preordain looking to find. He's got a lot of things he can get. Belcher wins on the spot. Tezzeret's great. Mind's Desire's great. Diminishing Returns. Time Twister. Lots of cards.
Tezzeret wins on the spot, right? Yeah, Tezzeret wins on the spot. So, Tezzeret. Okay, I believe this game's over. I think Tezzeret arrives, and instead of getting Time Vault as is his custom, he's just going to grab a Belcher, and unless Randy has brought in Mishra's Workshops, he'll just belch.
And if he has brought in Workshops, he's still a favorite to win, and he will win next turn.
Yes, but, and LSV is at -33, and Randy is somehow 2-0 after a single week of the Vintage Super League.
Yeah, we're 3/5 of the way through week 1, and Randy's sitting at 2 now.
It's an impressive feat.
Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, we're looking at it's going to take several weeks for a lot of people to get to 2 wins, but Randy's done it in about an hour with an Academy deck.
I can't do it until it's the 3rd weekend, so he's doing a lot better than I am.
Yeah, if he loses next week, though, he doesn't get a week 3 match, so you can come up, you can charge up from behind.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was pretty sweet. Yeah, I feel bad. If Luis hadn't cast that Thoughtseize, he would have only been at -31. So -33, it's not a great spot to be.
That's true. I mean, if this were EDH, he'd still be alive. So I guess that's worth pointing out. You can take solace in that.
Yeah, I'm sure Luis will feel great knowing that. I'll make sure to message him, and I'll make sure Paul messages him as much as possible.
That's good. He'd probably feel better about that.
All right. So coming up next, we have Tom Martell, we have Chris Pakula, and just more Vintage Super League.
Sounds good.